With the last generation of Smash Bros., fans were feeling a bit empty. They wanted something grand and instead got changes no one wanted. All of them wished for a new entry, one that was greater than the last. And that wish was granted. Twice. This is something you don't see too often. Smash Bros. For the 3DS and Smash Bros. For the Wii U. While similar, they are different games. Sakurai even said it himself, so with this, these will be ranked separately. However, they do have enough in common to devote a combination of a video for them, and you will see why starting with the 3DS version. The hype for this game was through the roof. Not only was it announced so long before release, but this would also be the first official way to play Smash Bros. On the go. It was, for lack of a better word, interesting, seeing as the 3DS wasn't all too powerful, so packing a game like Smash on it would prove to be difficult. It wasn't impossible though, as in 2015 from the Nintendo 3DS, Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS would be given to the world with a big reaction of, "Hey! When's the Wii U version coming out?" Yeah, while people were excited for this game, this version was not the version people want to choose when settling it for Smash. But why? Why does no one bat another eye at this game? I guess you can start out with the lack of an intro. Even Brawl had one that I didn't comment on because I thought it'd be too redundant, but here it just makes the game feel a little more empty. Not to mention the opening screen just looks blank compared to the others, and the scrolling PNGs just makes this all feel lacking, but it makes sense due to the limitations of the 3DS. But when starting up the game, you'll notice that the menu is just fucked. You got a big ass Smash button, tiny ass games and more, and a whole button just for Smash Run, something that I'll get back to later. The modes that are returning include Home Run Batting and Multi-Man Melee. New is Target Blast, replacing Target Test, and this is kind of fun. You have this bomb you need to rack percentages on and then knock into the targets. It's basically a fuse between Home Run and Target Test. Also returning is Classic Mode, and while it returns, it's also very different. While still randomized, you have 3 paths to choose from. One easy, one medium, and one hard, but even for the hard mode, you can get through it pretty fast. What has also changed is the final boss, now with a new path to it, but I'll get to that with the Wii U version. New to all the modes is Smash Run. Here, you are placed in a map and need to collect all these stats like power and jump, and at the end of it all, you are faced with a challenge where you try to become the victor. It's a unique mode, but not a whole replacement to Adventure Mode in my opinion. Also new is custom characters, now with certain abilities found from beating other modes, and these do a whole lot of nothing for many people. No one wants to go through collecting all of them moves. With a big roster, getting all of them is time consuming, and getting one for a specific character is left to chance. Not only that, but it changes what is usually an established character, so the competitive scene just wouldn't want that. They wouldn't want their main to be messed with, so they wouldn't generally touch that feature. And seeing as these custom moves allow for buffing, it creates an imbalance with all these characters. While it's a cool idea, it's hard to ever see this working, even in a future installment. And that's really it for the 3DS version. To put it lightly, it's a bare-bones Smash Bros. Game. If I were to sum it up, it's like if you took Sonic the Hedgehog and made it ran on a TI-83 calculator. While it could work, it will be inferior to the original. But with that one out of the way, it's time to get to the real meat of this video. This intro sucks. It's basically clips from the trailer set to an unimpressive theme. That's not to say it's bad, but compared to the others, it's just not as great. Like here, listen to each one. You have light jazzy feels with the first one. Epic cinematic feels with Melees. Crank that up with the full orchestra from Brawl. And then just a simple... It's underwhelming to say the least. This gets worse when it's accompanied to the clips from the trailers. Some in Wii U style, some not so much. It's a weak way to open the game. But the trash doesn't stop there, seeing as this menu is just as bad, if not worse, than the 3DS version. Like, what is this layout? Nothing is in a good spot. You got a good for nothing mode on the main menu, meanwhile Classic is in the games and more category. Like before, let me state what returns here. We got trophies again, and I don't even fucking bother due to these amiibos. You know, these things that were rare collectible collectibles at one point, but then became redundant within a year. I have all of Series 1 and a few other ones. Basically what these do is allow you to train a fighter of said amiibo for cockpits or something. The use never really interests me gameplay wise. I'll admit, they're cool, but what's the real point here? Also returning is Stage Builder, and well, it sucks. You can use the gamepad to draw terrain, and while that would be a cool idea, they limit the hell out of what you can draw. The lines are all jaggedy, and there aren't as many things to place as, say, Brawls. I guess they were trying to open up possibilities, but all they did was limit themselves to the point where it's worse than Brawls. That's not the only thing that's worse than Brawls. While Brawl did fuck up Classic Mode, it still stuck with its style. Smash Bros. For Wii U, however... What the fuck is this? Instead of the classic way of classic mode, we get like this choose your own fight sort of deal. It's stupid because now I know who I'm fighting and how many I'm fighting, so it defeats the whole I wonder who's gonna be next moment. Not only that, but the final fight has been changed as well. You start out fighting Master and Crazy Hand, but they got some tag team moves, which I enjoy. It creates for a harder battle, but now they share a health bar, so things aren't too hard. Up until the fight changes on you. See, now the two hands will transform into different forms, like a big guy who moves the stage, lizard things, swords, and a clone of your character. And then finally, exclusive to the Wii U version, we got the Master Fortress. Each form has unique moves that can be tough to dodge if you don't have good timing, or if you're just an idiot like me. But when you defeat all the forms, there appears a Master Core in which you gotta kill quickly or else you're doing the whole fight over again. I will say, it's a better conclusion than other games, but the journey just sucked. But even with that, there is something tiny bit different in Classic Mode, and well, it is a new feature to the game. Wow, there are more than 4 characters on the screen. Yeah, Smash for the Wii U introduced 8-player Smash, and while this could be seen as a good thing, I see it as an annoyance. Like, seriously, who wants to play with more than 4 characters? I can barely see who I am over here. Am I this person? This one? Am I over here? Oh wait, no, I'm this person. Oh, I'm about to die. Fuck. It's very cluttered and implemented very weirdly, you know? This is something that's better for multi-man melee, because in the multiplayer scene, it just sucks. Speaking of sucking, they added a new mode to the game, and it's a poor man's version of Mario Party. I still can't tell what the fuck a Smash Tour is. You know, the waste of space on the main menu I mentioned earlier? It's like Mario Party with a board and stuff, and then there's items, and buffs, and then, wait, just what? And, oh, I won. I don't know how. If you bump into a player on the board, every player gets into a challenge. If you win, you can win a fighter. If you lose, you can lose a fighter. At the end of it all, the amount of fighters you have determines how many lives you'll have in the fight. Not only that, but the buffs you collected wager in too. It's, not good. Turns are over very quickly. The roll seems janky, and choosing where you want to move is kind of overpowerful, seeing as you can just avoid everybody and collect the fighters that are just on the board. It's also just not fun. Why in a fighting game would I want to not fight my friends and instead walk around a janky ass board? But are there any modes that are good? I've been harping on the changed and the bad of Smash 4, but what is new to the game? Well, we can start out with the Master and Crazy Order. Each mode has you do a certain task for rewards, and at the end of the Crazy Orders, you have to fight Crazy Hand in order to keep all your rewards. The online was also improved from Brawl, keeping for some smoother fights between friends. And lastly, we have some newcomers. And if you don't know what's about to come next, then you can just leave. We got Villager, Mega Man, Wii Fit Trainer, Rosalina and Luma, Little Mac, Greninja, Mii Fighters, Palutena, Lucina, Dark Pit, Duck Hunt, Shulk, and Robin. Now, fighters are the same between each versions, meaning that due to the limitations of the 3DS, some things were cut/changed. For instance, characters like Sheik and Zero Suit Samus were now their own characters instead of transforming ones. Pokemon Trainer was cut and all that were left was Charizard, and the Ice Climbers were cut entirely. A lot of people were pissed though, seeing as popular characters were cut from the game and non-popular characters returned. So, to satisfy fans, Nintendo decided to release downloadable content. Not only did this mean returning fighters like Mewtwo, Roy, and Lucas, but this also meant that there were more newcomers, including Corrin, Bayonetta, Cloud, and Ryu. I gotta say, the DLC newcomers are way more interesting than the base games. For one, Cloud from Final Fantasy VII was not only a big inclusion, but he was also broken as shit. Speaking of overpowered, we have Bayonetta, whose style has been transferred well from her respective games. And finally, Ryu, and this is what made Smash Bros. More serious, because not only does he include Street Fighter stuff, but he also plays like his original game, making him for a pretty good crossover character. It's pretty solid all around, but there is something a little off about the game, or games. You see, these two, while they are set as different entries within the series, they are essentially the same game, but different. So this makes some things within the game a little weird. Like mentioned earlier, a whole character was cut because of the limitations of the 3DS, but the way stages vary feel unfair. The 3DS has way better stages to play, while on the Wii U is full of filler from the previous game. I understand the intent was for the 3DS to have a representation for handhelds, and the Wii U was for console, but they should have given the option to, cross over the stages to use stages from each version, like say when you connect the 3DS to the Wii U. That's another thing that was off. Connectivity between both consoles was hyped up as a big deal, and while you can do it, there's no real reward for doing so. The only thing you can do is transfer custom fighters and use the 3DS as a controller. And while Smash 4 is miles better than Brawl in terms of speed and feel, it oddly doesn't compare to Melee. While it's faster, it's just not fast enough for my taste. The physics in this game are also kind of whack. I mean, just look at this. Like, what the fuck was that? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the game feels like it's missing something. And while I do feel like there were bigger plans for this entry, there was one thing that set the whole thing back and limited the choices that they were able to make. The fact of the matter is they tried to make the same game but make it different, and in doing so they allowed the limitations of the 3DS version hinder the Wii U version. I know for a fact that the game could have been so much more, with more single player content and maybe even an adventure mode, but to do all that would mean one version would miss out. While the 3DS version isn't bad, it just feels lacking in compared to other entries, and that's not the game's fault, it's the fault of the hardware. The 3DS is not that powerful of a system, and cramming a game like Smash on it should not have an effect on a bigger console, seeing as it's different hardware. So while the 3DS version starts to lack, it also starts to limit the Wii U version. This is why the outcome feels so mediocre in the single player department, because normal verses are fine, but for the person who just wants to play by himself, they're not given too many options. They should have approached these games as different, not the same, because we couldn't have gotten a better representation of Smash for each console. I feel like I ruined my reputation a little bit with this one. I'm not saying that these are bad games, I'm just saying they could have been done a whole lot better. But with that out of the way, you know which one is next. It's the big one, the one that we've all been waiting for, and the one that I have been counting down to with this series. But you might have to wait a bit for this one, seeing as it's gonna take me some time to play the game and get everything I need for it. So until then, I hope you all enjoy the countdown to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.